Hello everyone, we are Media and Democracy RT. I'm Mizuki Matsumura.
I'm Ayaka To.
I'm Keisuke Wada.
I'm Christine Heaton.
I'm Ganta Tango.
And I'm Shiho Hijiwa.
So first of all, we want to share what topics we have discussed so far. This is a concept map of our keywords. We covered much content related to both social media and mass media. Besides, we widely defined media, so we talked about textbooks as well. We compared how textbooks explain World War II. And we found how difficult to educate students with neutral perspectives because the content is different in each country. Also, COVID-19, our presidential election, and BLM are hot topics these days. So we discussed the relationships between media and them. We also did FT with Imai-san, who is our JASC alumni. And he was our vice president of NHK. We learned media history and journalism from him. Do you know what those numbers present? 390 million. It means there are 390 million users on Twitter. How about 48 million? The number indicates how many bot accounts there are on Twitter. In today's presentation, we will talk about our opinions about media and democracy. We will talk about background, analysis, insights, challenges, and suggestions. Our focus is the influence of media to individuals.
Next, I will talk about the background. We picked up 5 points. The first point is social media has become one of the informational infrastructures. As we can all agree upon, social media is now playing an indispensable role in the society of 2012. Social media provides a large amount of information, which may surpass traditional media. Also, we can easily spread information to all over the world and trigger world-scale action, such as BLM movement and the Arab Spring. The second point is drastic development of informational technology. Analyzing big data which contains various information such as demographics or personal information. Information that users get is tailored to one's preferences, and the bear reading logs and are reutilized for another analysis. This circulation of information reinforces the accuracy and precision of the big data use. Third point is undeveloped legal system and social norms on the expanded space of speech. Legal system and social norms aren't established enough. Regulating the media is always controversial because it may violate the freedom of press and speech. So many countries or societies struggle with making an environment where the media plays appropriate roles. The first point is lack of media literacy. There isn't enough media literacy education. People are information hungry and gullible, easily believing what the media says without checking whether it is biased or accurate. Many people still don't truly understand what they casually post on social media can have huge impacts on society. The last point is social instability as potential social division. Society is potentially divided, especially in America. The division between liberals and conservatives has been more and more serious. It can be said that the media and society promote the division of each other.
Now it's the time to think what is actually going on in the society of 2020. So we did analysis about the current situation. What we found is the three things. The first thing is the divergence between the development of informational technology and people's literacy of media and informational technology. Since Johannes Gutenberg invented the printing press in the 15th century, we have been developing technology with super rapid speed, especially the media-related technology. As media is the means that people send or receive information, this rapid growth in technology encouraged the rapid change of society as well. However, although the technology and society have changed significantly, our ability to appreciate the media did not accompany with it. Still in 2020, most people are struggling with appreciating media due to the lack of media literacy. The second thing that we found is the flood of information. What I mean by that is the people are having difficulty in determining true or false. As we have an enormous amount of media platforms, including traditional media and SNS, now information around us is also an enormous amount. In such a situation, it's significantly hard to distinguish whether what you are seeing right now on your phone is accurate or not. The final thing that we found out is the bloated space of speech on undeveloped legal system. Until a few decades ago, there's a fair way for us to advocate or our opinion. In fact, not so many people are even allowed to advocate their own opinion. Unlike those times, now people have the ways and technology that each individual can raise their voices. That is definitely a good thing. However, it also means that there's no longer limitation or controlling systems on SNS. Now, there's a lot of bots, BOTS, which are SNS accounts that were intentionally made by specific organizations or figures for specific purpose, like spreading propagandistic opinion. Also, there's no specific laws or agency that can control such situation. Thus, media in today's society goes uncontrollable and super chaotic.
So based on the analysis of the current situation and the background, I'd like to suggest 3 points of insight and challenges that the current world is facing. So first of all, there can be extremization and the polarization. So SNS can create significant mobilization of public opinion when going to the same direction or uniting under one certain ideology. So looking at the example of the Arab Spring in 2011, or BLM movement in 2020, the mass people were strongly united under a simple but strong belief. As you can see from these two examples, this nature of SNS is not necessarily a shortcoming, but it could easily fall into a bad result. Uniting under one certain ideology would make us moderate or neutral opinion obscure. And so just looking at all the movement on SNS would not lead to a correct understanding of public opinion. The nature of SNS, that it connects people who have the same belief, is not always consistent with the coexistence of different opinions. And secondly, media coverage distortion problems. So media coverage necessarily includes the perspective of the media institutions. That is not an exception in the present time, or even more strengthened. For example, BLM protest started in Minneapolis. Looters coverage was distorted and leading to more looters. So originally it was only people who wanted to purchase milk to protect themselves from the pepper spray. However, as this scene was reported and spreaded, the way it was reported changed and leading to a distorted image of the incident. So as the space of speech got even more enlarged and not well organized, transmission of information has become even more easier, fast, yet not well checked. And lastly, there is a necessity for redefinition of public opinion. So as we explained in the earlier part, the bloated space of speech on undeveloped legal system has made it difficult to correctly observe and understand the public opinion. Accompanied by the nature of SNS that it obscures moderate or neutral opinion, there can be several interpretations of public opinion these days. So in addition, as informational technology has developed drastically, the variables that the mass people are affected when forming and expressing their opinion has exponentially increased. And as you can see from the case of the 2016 US presidential election, the mass advertisement campaign and utilization of Twitter for mobilization of public opinion clearly shows the transfiguration of public opinion. So given the increase in relevant actors in the space of speech and the development of informational technology and the data science, it is of absolute necessity for the redefinition of public opinion. So as a whole, while the space of speech has advanced significantly as media-related informational technology developed, the space of speech and public opinion, which is the most important fundamental of democracy, has become diversified yet unstabilized. And we're moving on to the suggestion part.
So our suggestions are threefold. We will first focus on the issue of social media campaign losing meaning. We can approach this problem by three measures. The first measure is the adding explanation of the initial purpose. Letting hashtags spread without explanation or statement of purpose may dilute or distort the importance of the movement itself. The second measure is showing the ways to physically support the campaign, including the donation sites, signing petitions, and protest location in your community. The third measure is to implement the function on social media that brings users directly to information about the organization that the movement is centered around. This can be done by directly users that interact with a certain hashtag on information about this central organization and those involved. So let's say if you clicked on the hashtag of BLM, that will lead you to the Black Lives Matter Foundation info and an overview of the movement.
Another issue we can identify is how we can reduce the spread of fake news. The fundamental solution we can all strive for is raising our own media literacy, or how we navigate the news media atmosphere over the internet today. We as a species are inclined to share and consume ideas that align with our own. How we can combat this is by considering the objective truths and ideas that are justifiably different from our own. We can accomplish this by implementing a rewritten social media algorithm that brings the opinions of others more often alongside the objective truth, but also acknowledge the existence of bots on social media that may skew public opinion and understanding. Thus, a more widespread use of fact-checking statements to prevent quick spread of false information is necessary. And finally, warn others of sensitive content to protect vulnerable communities online. Our final suggestions seek to resolve the issue of widespread polarized media consumption. If you find your newsfeed on social media is comprised solely of news articles from a certain political or social leaning, then we suggest you seek out articles that lean towards the center or other side of the spectrum more often. This also encourages those who interact with media to form their own educated opinion with multiple sources from various leanings, rather than having an opinion that can appear biased or skewed. Finally, we must all come to an understanding that using solely social media for news events and consumption of news is not the most factual way to receive news, and that using other news media technology, such as televised news broadcastings, newspapers, and radio alongside social media would promote a more healthy relationship with yourselves and news media. As a parting note, we would like you all to turn to the poll that we have linked in the Zoom chat right now. And we pose the question to you now in one word: how can you improve your relationship with news media? Thank you all for listening.